Well, we're going to introduce our next guest with the last one here.
Yeah, that sounds good.
So there has been a fascinating community process going on, and I don't mean proposed plans to replace a parking lot next to seniors housing at Devon and Sheridan to put in a new Target, but rather a very unique multi-purpose library housing project that community residents have been sort of plotting and planning and scheming about for a while, and suddenly a bunch of other people are interested. There's a hearing Monday at what is the site of the old bowling barn, as I remember it, at Lunton Western, to put in a new library that would serve West Ridge with housing on top. And our guest knows something about this project. So let's introduce our first guest who's here for something else. Ahmed Khan, tell us about this effort that has been unfolding in West Ridge to bring a new library into the neighborhood.
Ahmed Khan, good morning.
Hey guys, how are you?
Welcome to Live from the Heartland, Ahmed.
No, thank you. First and foremost, it's a privilege to be here amongst you guys to talk about this and a couple other things. I'll jump right into that. So for about the past 2.5 years, a group of community leaders, activists, and organizations have been talking about the need for a new library in West Rogers Park.
Because the current one is California.
California, yeah. It's about off the corner of California and Devon, just a block north of Devon. It's a very, old age library. When we have libraries around the city, technology is really important in this day and age. It's not just books, but different technology tools to help students kind of keep up with the times. The library is a little old in that, and it's that the facility is not large enough for the size of that community. The building is old, the resources are old, and so this kind of pushed a group of activists to form a coalition, an umbrella coalition called Learn West Rogers Park. Learn, the acronym stands for Library Enrichment and Renewal Network.
Sweet.
And it kind of came about that some of the founding members of Learn West Rogers Park were the Jewish Community Council of West Rogers Park, the West Rogers Park Community Organization, of which I am a member of, West Ridge Chamber of Commerce, Rogers Park Business Alliance, and the North Boundary Homeowners Association. And basically it said that we work in all of our different pockets. We have different issues that our organizations may be broken down along demographic, religious lines, east end of the ward versus west end of the ward and whatnot. But hey, what's one thing that we can all come together on? We all need a library. All of our kids, all of our senior citizens, everybody basically uses this library. So for over the past 2 years, people have been advocating, the groups have been meeting regularly. Tony Martinez, who actually, he's a resident of the 50th Ward. He was serving as a chairman of this network. And there was a petition on change.org that they started. It garnered about over 1,000 signatures to that petition. Community leaders, everybody, the elected officials in the area were initially technically supportive of it. So over the past 2 years, like I've been trying to say, I keep saying that is because this group has been working on this over the past 2 years. DNA Info covered this, the News Star, a lot of different publications. Basically, to the surprise of this group, apparently a couple of months ago, our alderman and the mayor, they announced this pilot project, senior housing coupled with library, kind of killing two birds with one stone. It was a surprise to the group. Basically, when this was announced, this whole slew of emails kind of went around and said, hey, we've been trying to meet with the Building Planning Commission. We've met with the library board, tried to meet with the alderman. Sometimes it was successful, some of the meetings were delayed, and without letting the members of this group know, all of a sudden now this is happening. So this group is like a little burnt, but kind of looking towards the greater good of this, saying that, okay, well, this is what we wanted. Now how is the alderman going to allow these same groups and other community members to be part of the process of how the library is actually going to be built?
Ahmed, tell us who the alderman is.
Deborah Silverstein.
So, Ahmed, just, the announcement that we got said that this is the second community-wide meeting being held to gather feedback.
Yes, there was an initial community meeting. There was supposed to be one on the 31st. I think this is the next one coming up is because that was postponed due to some scheduling conflict, I guess, with the alderman. And so, yes, there is a community meeting. Learn West Rogers Park has been publicizing the meeting within its networks and listservs and whatnot. There's a Facebook group that was recently created to help raise awareness of this, just because even though the group didn't like how the process played out with the red tape and the bureaucracy to come to this decision, they want this library, and now they want to make sure that they can get in as many community members into the room so that it's not just kind of, here's a library.
Top down.
Yes, is it what we want in this library going to be there?
Yeah, I know that Tom wants to chime in, and I think we should talk about how the community development plays out in an independent ward, you know. And we had many examples of this over the years in the 49th ward where community meetings would be called. There was a zoning committee when things needed a zoning change. Not only did community members learn about what that is, which is a big deal to learn what makes for a zoning committee, zoning change need, but also to be ahead of the game and actually say, yeah, no, I don't think it's worth a zoning change. Or yeah, we're okay with the zoning change, but no other driveway cutout, or back it off of the sidewalk a little bit. You know, in other words, input. All right, so you're talking about the 50th ward process regarding this possible new library and the kind of cool idea of a senior housing complex near it. I like, but we have a similar thing in the 49th ward, only it was kind of the reverse. Tom?
Well, ironically, and I'm even hearing from the alderman as we start this show about how he wants to get back to me about my misperceptions about a public land giveaway, which is how some neighborhood residents are characterizing a proposed target mid-rise development adjacent to a seniors mid-rise at that, underpopulated corner of Sheridan and Devon.
He must know you've got a microphone this morning.
And I don't know if he did or realized that or not. The alderman's out of town, but promised to do a follow-up conversation. While this project has been in the works for a year, many of us who aren't on zoning committees or inside the alderman's inner circle really haven't known, other than one or two DNA stories, where this development was at. About the only good thing I can say about the process at this point is that we're lucky to have a relatively good guy developer trying to do this. He's the guy that his firm did the new Heartland Health Clinic on Devon. They are actually rehabbing the seniors building right now, although there have been some issues over heat and some other things about the way that's going. But generally, he's considered one of the good guys when it comes to this kind of development. It's not clear that we've heard much about what the public benefit is for what is a 99-year lease giveaway of public land by the Chicago Public Housing Authority to private interests. It's not even clear how many affordable units we're going to get out of the 111 that are being proposed to be built. And of course, there are all sorts of traffic concerns. So we are hoping there will be additional community meetings and maybe a design charrette to put a fancy name on it, or just some further engagement with the developer, with the CHA, which is responsible for the land, and to be honest, the chair of the City Council Housing Committee, who happens to be our alderman, who I would have hoped would have been a little bit more in the driver's seat on this. And we may hear more about, what the future development planning for this project will be.
Back to the 50th ward, Ahmed, can you share a little bit of your take on the alderman in general? And I think, didn't you run for alderman in the 50th against Silverman?
Silverstein, yeah.
Silverstein, sorry.
So yeah, I did run in 2011 for alderman in the 50th ward, and kind of, what Tom said, that it got me started thinking. I'm all for transparency and accountability, so I'll answer your question with a little bit more of insight into this library process. So when these community groups, mind you, the more active individuals in the community who, when they started this effort, they reached out to the alderman. We got the generic answer that, of course I'm supportive. I mean, who would come out and say I'm not supportive of a library? But the answer was the money's not there. Right. I mean, I think we've dealt with this issue across our city. We could have a whole day-long show on TIF and where money's hidden and whatnot, slush funds, and we got the generic bureaucratic answer, there's no money. And over the year, this group said, okay, we're not just gonna take that answer. They did their research, did their homework, talked to different communities across the city, how they got their libraries, did research from across the country to try to find innovative ideas. So mind you, it's the community group who's doing the effort, the research and whatnot. But to wrap that point up, every time that they tried to meet with, try to get the alderman to be with them, to be their advocate with the library board, the planning commission, it was a really big tug of war. It wasn't that, hey, I'll be your advocate and I'll do this work with you and for you. The group really, really had to push the alderman to try to do this. And
Why is that?
I don't know. I am also worried and concerned, and it bothers me. I mean, I ran.
Does she feel under assault, or does she feel threatened politically by?
I would bet that community is really diverse, and go ahead.
I don't know. It's the reality of it is that when you're coming from Alderman Bernard Stone, now obviously he's a good man. I liked him. Might be a very questionable alderman, but he was always kind and nice to me. And but coming from the later years of his holding office, and then so I'll use the word going from terrible, perhaps, to kind of
Better.
Okay.
Yeah.
It kind of numbs the populace a little bit. They kind of get complacent and content, like, okay, it's still a little better. At least somebody's picking up our calls, or somebody shows up to a community meeting. Now the quality of what the alderman does at these community meetings or when they pick up the call, that's the concern. Are we just settling, or is the quality important for us?
You're listening to Live from the Heartland on WLUW 88.7 FM. We're talking with Ahmed Khan, and we're going to have a little musical interlude now with another version of D4T.
Rosalita, our second running of the D4T. Pay attention, folks. You're going to be tested. There will be a quiz. You are listening to Live from the Heartland. Our guest is Ahmed Khan. Ahmed, I love having you here. We first got together on a campaign.
Yes, we did.
One heck of a great campaign a couple of years ago. You were a huge help coming into the Northeast Side office for Chuy Garcia.
It was
2015.
very fun. I mean, I was there for about a month and a half, and 24/7. We went all in.
And I was there for 5 months, 4 of which were 24/7.
Hey, we won the 49th ward. So
Yeah, we did indeed.
We certainly did.
I'll take some credit
And
for
don't
that.
forget it.
Absolutely.
I was placed out of the 49th ward on election day, and oh boy, the turnout of volunteers. We went. When we talk about walking the precincts, we were like 3-4 deep. We went 3-4 times. That's how many volunteers we had. So
On election day.
on election day.
Yeah, if
And
we had just done that a little
yeah.
bit sooner in more wards.
We'll probably have another
Yeah, I
opportunity.
think
Somebody,
I think we got it coming around the bend
He's
again.
thinking about doing it again, and this time he has time.
Yeah.
The biggest
Yes.
question was he got in late, and it was very impressive to put together that type of campaign in such short of a time. Now he has time.
Yeah, and we
So-
can never not give Willie Wilson credit for helping us get to the runoff. Got
True.
to.
Ahmed, let me ask you a question about the current events today. Your reactions to the peaceful transfer of power to various ceremonies and the first moves of this new regime.
Oh boy. Yeah, it's just been a week, hasn't it?
2.
Or 2 weeks.
Time flies.
Time flies. Yes. I think the transition has been very, very confusing. It's something that people have not been used to seeing. I guess Democrats have taken the approach that, we don't want to be obstructionists. We don't want to be the people kind of dragging things along, because we didn't like that in the past, and past administrations didn't do this. But we have a different person who's president, person whose agenda that we have not seen
Ever.
We also had 8 years of the Republicans just, trying to stop everything Obama tried to do.
Right. So it's kind of like, Democrats faced this obstructionism, and when they argued against that, now they're hesitant to say, do we become the obstructionists? I say, do it. I said, they're not going to come back and say, oh, hey, you guys were not the obstructionists, so we'll work with you. I'm concerned about Democratic senators who are voting to confirm Trump's nominees for various positions on the basis of that argument. And I say vote no for all of them, because you're not going to get that support back. They're not going to return the favor. I don't foresee that favor being returned.
It's very interesting. That's well put. I think there is the nuance, though, in politics, and I do believe that when Elizabeth Warren wrote her piece about why she voted yes for, was it?
Ben Carson.
Ben Carson, right. She wrote a thing that explained, okay, she had given him many pages worth of questions. He wrote something long back. There's all kind of snide remarks on who wrote it for him. But the fact of the matter is, the nuance, if there's going to be any, which is kind of a question, is it just going to be all against, all for, is it going to be, we have to hit the streets every single day, which I kind of think we do. But for those who are in office, they have to work with some of these people. And I understood when I read her thing why she would do that.
Yeah, I absolutely, love Elizabeth Warren, understand the argument, but perhaps I'm representing a sentiment that is on the streets, that, being at these protests, talking to these community activists, they're feeling a little burned by their Democratic leadership, saying that we're out there fighting for this, and then when we see in a Twitter post an explanation of this, this is why we voted, whatnot. I mean, I could see the other side of it, that we do have to follow the process. If we deny these individuals, will they come up with somebody just as worse or not? So I see the argument, but perhaps my sentiment comes from, colleagues on the streets, that we're fighting for this on the streets. What are you doing?
What are you waiting for?
Putting your neck out there, just like people on the streets are putting their neck out.
We did not have a lot of politicians come out to O'Hare, did we?
We actually did. We actually did. Some sincere, some I see opportunistic.
So who are the sincere people in your...
Oh, well, I'm not going to say who I think is sincere or not, but one of the first calls I actually got on Saturday morning was from Alderman Amaya Pawar from the 47th.
Mm-hmm.
And, I do consider his presence there sincere, because it's been something that he's been advocating for the last couple of months, actually, since Donald Trump became president. He's been very vocal on his social media. This is before he even announced he was running for governor.
Mm-hmm.
And so, he called me sincerely concerned and said, hey, I heard people are being detained. What are you guys doing about it?
Right.
And it kind of put me in motion to make some calls to other community activists, and they said, we're trying to confirm that can we even be there at O'Hare. I don't remember the last time people decided to descend onto O'Hare Airport.
I don't
these
remember
numbers.
it ever happening.
And so people were kind of concerned at the ramifications of doing so, but once they went through all that, that happened. I saw Senator Daniel Biss from Evanston was there.
Right. Yes,
Jan Schakowsky was there.
Okay.
Chewy.
Yeah, Chewy was there.
Will
Guzzardi, Teresa Ma, State Representative. John Fritchie was there. Robin Kelly. These are the few. J.B. Pritzker was there.
There you go.
Ahmed, can you
I'll leave that there.
can you give us a little insight into your take on the effects of the travel and immigration, positions of the new administration, what that has meant to people not only here in Chicago but throughout the country and throughout the world?
Absolutely. I think one of the reasons that Chicago turned out in the numbers that they did within hours is because a lot of these, Chicago being so diverse, these 7 countries that were added for questionable reasons to this travel ban, we have a lot of those demographics in our city. And not to mention that, because of the kind of maybe hidden, maybe overt innuendo of this being a Muslim ban, it threw American Muslims who are citizens even, green card holders from other countries into confusion. That am I going to start getting scrutinized? And comforting individuals that, no, your country's not on the list, is not doing enough to people. People are worried. I'm getting calls every day from not just people, friends that I know that are from these countries, but from random Muslim countries across the world. I've had calls from Pakistan. India's not a quote-unquote Muslim country. I'm from India. I have people that have plans to travel to India that are worried. Am I going to pulled aside for extra scrutiny just because I have a Muslim name? So it has thrown people into a frenzy. What I have noticed and observed is that even if people are not on these list of countries, are they being thrown into some extra scrutiny? Yes. I mean, people that said in the past that 10 minutes with customs has turned into an hour, 2 hours. And so, yeah, it's definitely thrown a lot of people into worry, people that are overseas. Can we come back? People that have plans to go overseas for whatever reason, for weddings, to meet their parents, are like, can I ever go and come back safely?
It's incredible. I know that you are active with the Arab American Network?
No, I actually
Or no?
So the Arab American Action Network was one of the groups that led the kind of the response for the protests at O'Hare. They're the ones that put out the major call. Just a supporter of that organization. Yes. So
we have a number of immigrant issue specific organizing groups in Chicago. As you said, we're as a port of entry. Do you see that this and the reaction that you were in the middle of at O'Hare for a couple of days there last weekend? Do you see this as helping to bring people together into a coalesced majority that might continue to...
absolutely. So first and foremost, let me give a huge shout out to all the attorneys that came out to O'Hare.
Amen.
I mean, a huge shout out.
We'll have one of them next week.
So
we couldn't make it this week.
I mean, these are not ambulance chasing attorneys here. Let me tell you this. These are attorneys from small firms, big firms, nonprofits, corporations, solo practitioners who gave up their valuable personal, professional, family time to kind of just descend to O'Hare Airport. Over 1,200 inquiries from attorneys, interpreters, social workers. They were able to staff people, 800 people have been staffed in just a week. So this is kind of formed into, the professionalism rivaling that of any major law firm. This is not haphazard, this is not random. And, they were able to help, to my knowledge, close to 200, 300 families, about 200 to 300 families. And families love, friends who came to O'Hare saying, hey, my family's flying in, my friend's flying in, what do I do? So they were there. And yes, while one might assume, indeed, some of the leading organizations in this are organizations that may have affiliation by demographic, like the Arab American Action Network, CARE Chicago, the Council of American and Islamic Relations. It's the whole team is diverse. I mean, you have people from all walks of life, that they're there to stand up for justice.
I think that it's, as Katie hinted earlier, it's interesting for 3 white folks to be talking about something that is largely impacting populations beyond their own personal experience. And yet, not to put too fine a point on it, a heck of a lot of organizing has gone on since 9/11, because that's the last time the Muslim community would have felt a particular set of attacks,
Yes.
guilt by association, whatever, however you want to characterize it. That's the closest I ever came since the civil rights movement and having a sense of what it'd be like to be differently complexioned, and just because of that, I'm stopped at every airport security checkpoint for much longer with a greater pat down. I mean, I traveled with mixed groups during that time, and it was stunning to experience what was the normal experience for other folks who look like they were from somewhere else. Muslim faith is the fastest growing faith in Chicago in this diversity that we've been talking about. And I'm not surprised. I'm glad to see the rest of us willing to support folks when they are
I mean, I
feeling
think-
once again attacked
yeah.
for no good reason.
I just got I was trying to pull it back. I got one of those messages from the Washington Post that said that State Department officials should allow for visas to be honored today. So now we have this, I mean, this is the way this guy works, right? Throws it up in the air, everybody has to react. You got the brave judge in Washington State saying, yeah, no, this doesn't work. And that affects everybody. This fellow in the White House has no good way of communicating. He's got a third
Twitter.
of the positions filled, if that, around important stuff. So what's going to happen today? Is somebody today going to say, "Let me jump on a plane while it's legal for me"? I mean, I assume some of that is going on.
I think they're lined up waiting to get on planes.
I think,
Yeah, probably.
yeah, because, okay, so the day after the executive order, a day or two later, there was a temporary stay put in.
Right.
But it was not fully complied to by customs and
Right, border guards.
Yes. It's because any new executive order, any new like statute law, there are understandable hiccups that are along the way because of transition of information and implementation. There was no training, sensitivity training about, hey, how do we actually implement this?
Yeah.
So while the Department of Homeland Security, CBP, everybody, these entities have said, okay, now we're going to have to honor this travel or reinstate visas and
Right.
whatnot. Airlines have taken away alerts to these people from these countries. People are still wary and concerned, and what the legal, I'm by no means a legal expert, but what I've sensed is legal experts are still advising their clients to not travel because this has been a nail-biting roller coaster. Trump's administration has decided to change the restraining order, so this is going to be lost in or drowned in this legal battle where any given day things could change. So they're telling people that within the window, if your legal status and you have your paperwork right, and you're out of country, please travel back immediately. And if you have plans or you're intending to leave now, then be wary and do seek legal counsel before you leave.
I'm afraid there's another lesson to draw from this, which is if this is an example of effective executive action, we're really caught up in a lot of executive hubris because the new regime really blew this. They executed it poorly. In fact, I'd even suggest they should be fired. But I may be borrowing too much from
Fire 'em.
Pop TV. I want to ask you if you could share with our listeners as the headlines continue to roll out, what are one or two things people could do to really show they have folks' backs? I mean, not everyone can run out to the airport. Not everyone can even send a check to the ACLU. But what are one or two things in the coming week that folks who are hearing about this issue might be able to do?
I think the lawyers, the attorneys group at O'Hare, there's a Twitter account and a Facebook page, ORD Lawyers HQ. The Facebook page is ORD Lawyers HQ as well. And I think definitely go like it, follow it on the Twitter feed, and the attorneys are watching these. So at the least, go out and thank them, send a note of thanks, and there's a different set of actions that they put out regularly. Like this I'm trying to think of the best way, because I mean, people are sending food donations, baked goods. People brought cookies, and they loved it. It's just, they're seeing this output of support, the support coming to them when they're not asking for it, and it's just motivating them. They're there from 6 a.m., 3 shifts, 6 a.m. all the way to midnight, 7 days a week. Plan to continue this indefinitely, and I really think
At the international terminal.
at Terminal 5, yes, and with possible travel now spiking because people trying to take advantage of this temporary restraining order, or this restraining order until this is figured out.
Right.
Can go either way. People are trying to travel now, and so the need for these attorneys are still there. So I think, follow them on Facebook, follow them on Twitter, see what they're doing. Make sure to share that information. I think share the information on social media about the work that they're doing. They're sharing articles about specific cases. Spread awareness. I think spreading awareness is the biggest thing. There's a lot of misconceptions about why this travel ban exists, and I think that'll really help.
Well, Ahmed, I really appreciate you coming on today, and especially on this topic, which is both not fully understood by those of us who haven't had an immigrant for 2 generations in my family. We want to support, we want to have the backs of our neighbors. You and I were both at a meeting this week that talks about what we can do going forward. We don't have time to talk about our revolution, but there was a point where we were asked to put on a little sheet of paper who should be primaried
Yes.
next year. And
What do you mean by that, Kate?
that means that there are Democrats who act like Republicans, and we should run someone who's more of a progressive against some of them.
Hallelujah.
I think the one who won in our audience was Dan Lipinski.
He got a lot of
votes
yes.
to go away. And I noticed my
That would be
alderman didn't
great.
get any, but I think that's because I was the only 49th warder in the room. But I like the fact that our revolution, which comes out of Chewy, which comes out of Bernie, in Chicago anyway, is going forward, and that room was a really good representation.
There's a lot of very good people in that room,
Yeah.
and I loved the kind of pushing the envelope, the test of progressivism that really we have a lot of fake progressives.
That's right.
Especially in Illinois, and kind of putting the pressure on them and
Yep.
saying live up to the talk that you put
No
out.
fake progressives.
All right, well, we're going to have to go back into another version of Deporte, but I want to thank you again, Ahmed.
It's my pleasure, guys.
We'll ask you again because I think you're going to keep us informed.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much. Have a great weekend.
Appreciate it.